There is technically no such thing as Amish food. No religious law commands it, no sacred text describes it, and yet mention Amish food traditions to anyone who has ever eaten in Lancaster County and their eyes light up immediately. Something real is there, something that has fed families for 300 years without a single cooking show, food blog, or celebrity chef to explain it. That is the mystery worth unpacking. Most people assume that Amish eat simply because they live simply. That assumption is close. This is the deeper truth by a wide margin. The Amish do not eat plain food because they lack imagination or skill. They eat the way they eat because every dish on their table answers a specific question about how a person should live. What grows here, what lasts through winter, what fuels a body through 12 hours of field work, and what holds a community together when 400 hungry people show up at your farm on a Tuesday. Those are not small questions, and the food answers all of them at once. Most food cultures in the modern world have drifted away from that kind of honest purpose. Packaged ingredients, outsourced cooking, and meals eaten alone in front of a screen have quietly replaced something that was really useful. The Amish never let go of it. That is what makes this worth understanding. The one thing this video is really about is not a recipe. It is a complete food system, built from the ground up, that has quietly outperformed the modern world at its own game. And it belongs to a culture that most outsiders call Amish, but that insiders call Pennsylvania Dutch. Two overlapping sides that share one fabulous table. To understand how that system works, you have to go back to 16th century Switzerland and Germany. The Amish trace their origins to the Anabaptist movement, a group of radical Christians who believed in adult baptism and separation from worldly power. Governments across Europe hunted them, imprisoned them, and executed them for those beliefs. In the late 1600s, a leader named Jacob Amann pushed his followers toward even stricter discipline, and his branch became the Amish. Facing ongoing persecution, German-speaking families began crossing the Atlantic in search of somewhere they could simply be left alone. By the early 1700s, they were settling in Pennsylvania, drawn by William Penn's promise of religious tolerance. They landed on some of the richest farmland in colonial America, soil where wheat, rye, corn, and barley grew in abundance. Those four grains immediately worked their way into everything: bread, noodles, pies, porridge, and puddings. What emerged was essentially Swiss-German farm cooking, transplanted into ideal growing conditions and left to develop undisturbed for generations. The philosophy underneath it was simple and powerful. Food is fuel, food is family, and food is the most tangible way to express what you believe about how life should be lived. So what actually happens in an Amish kitchen, step by step, day by day? It starts before the meal in the pantry, which is not a convenience but a survival system. Every summer and fall, Amish families run their kitchens like small canning factories. Tomatoes go into jars as whole fruits, sauce, and paste. Peaches, pears, cherries, and apples are sealed in glass and lined up on cellar shelves. Green beans, corn, peas, and carrots disappear into quart jars by the hundreds. Cabbage gets salted and fermented into crocks of sauerkraut that last all winter. Even meat gets canned, beef, pork, and chicken preserved in glass, so protein is available every month of the year without electricity or freezer space. That pantry is what makes 3 home-cooked meals a day genuinely possible in January, when nothing is growing and roads may be impassable. Behind the pantry stands the farm itself. Amish farmers rotate their fields through corn, then oats or barley, then legumes, then cover crops like rye and clover. That rotation rebuilds soil nutrients naturally, controls pests without heavy chemicals, and keeps the land productive across decades. Horses pull the plows instead of tractors, and horses run on hay rather than diesel, while producing manure that fertilizes the following season's crop. Cows graze on open pasture, chickens move freely outside, and animals are raised without the industrial feedlot. conditions that dominate commercial agriculture. To the Amish, none of this is a farming strategy chosen for efficiency. It is stewardship, the belief that land is a gift, not a resource to be extracted. That belief shapes every ingredient before it ever reaches the stove. Now consider what comes out of that system. Shoofly pie may be the most famous dish Amish food traditions has ever produced, and it appeared on Pennsylvania baking tables around 1880. It is a deep, gooey pie built almost entirely from molasses, brown sugar, and flour, finished with a layer of sweet, crumbled topping. Bakers call it a desperation pie because it requires nothing that could spoil and nothing that was expensive. No fresh fruit, no eggs, nothing that winter makes unavailable. Depending on the baker, the bottom layer comes out either sticky and syrup-drenched or firm and sliceable, which locals call a wet bottom or a dry bottom pie. And both sides have loyal defenders. So why does it carry that particular name? One explanation says, pools of molasses on cooling pies drew swarms of flies that had to be shooed away constantly. A stranger theory points to a traveling circus mule named Shoofly, who became genuinely famous across Pennsylvania Dutch country in the mid-1800s. His name appeared on flour bags, horse remedies, and molasses tins, and that molasses connection may have attached his name to the pie. Nobody knows for certain, and that ambiguity is part of the dish's charm. Sit alongside Shoofly pie on any Pennsylvania Dutch dessert table, and you will almost certainly find the whoopie pie. 2 domes of soft chocolate cake sandwiched around a cloud of cream filling. It is listed alongside Shoofly pie as one of the signature icon foods of this tradition, and it has become recognized far beyond Lancaster County, though the Pennsylvania Dutch claim it as their own. Then there is Scrapple, which began as a German dish called Panhas, meaning roughly pan rabbit. It starts with pork scraps and organ meats, bound together with cornmeal and buckwheat flour, seasoned with marjoram, sage, and thyme, simmered slowly and then pressed into loaf pans until solid. Slices are cut from the loaf and pan-fried until the outside turns brown and crisp, while the inside stays smooth and creamy. It sounds humble because it is humble, but it connects medieval peasant thrift directly to the nose-to-tail cooking philosophy that fashionable restaurants charge a great deal of money to recreate today. Nothing from the animal is discarded, and that principle runs through every Amish kitchen without exception. That same thrift shaped another Pennsylvania Dutch original that most Americans encounter without knowing its origins: Lebanon Bologna, a deeply smoked, tangy cured beef sausage that takes its name from Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. Unlike most Bologna, it is made entirely from beef, fermented to develop its distinctive sour note, and cold smoked over hardwood for days. It belongs to the same preservation logic as Scrapple, extending the animal's usefulness as far as skill and patience allow. And then there is the soft pretzel. The version now sold at every ballpark, mall, and street cart in America traces directly back to Pennsylvania Dutch bakers, who carried the tradition from German-speaking Europe and embedded it so deeply in this region that it became inseparable from the culture. The Pennsylvania Dutch did not invent the pretzel, but they gave America its version of it. Beyond the famous dishes, Amish tables carry a tradition that has been both celebrated and misunderstood for nearly a century. So why does every old Pennsylvania Dutch cookbook mention 7 sweets and 7 sours? The tradition held that every proper meal required exactly 7 sweet condiments and 7 sour ones. Sweet jams, fruit butters, and sugared beets on one side, and sour pickles, relishes, and vinegar-dressed salads on the other. Red beet eggs, hard-boiled eggs pickled in a vivid crimson brine of beet juice and vinegar, appear on nearly every such table, their deep purple color impossible to miss, and their sharp sweet flavor perfectly placed in the sour column. A cookbook from 1936 described guests counting the dishes and teasing the hostess if she fell short of the full 14. Food historian William Woys Weaver, whose book As American as Shoofly pie has spent decades separating authentic tradition from invented tourist mythology, found something more straightforward underneath the legend. German cooking has always balanced sweet against sour. The sour pickles cut through rich, fatty pork and beef. The sweet preserves supply fast energy for people doing physical labor from sunrise to sunset. The number 7, Weaver concluded, was largely a marketing device invented when Lancaster County restaurants began selling an Amish experience to tourists in the 1930s. The real tradition is genuine and valuable. The specific number was mostly theater. What is equally genuine is the regional variation that food historians have mapped across Pennsylvania Dutch country. There is an identifiable coriander belt running through certain Pennsylvania counties, while cooks in Lancaster and York County tend to season the same dishes with sage instead. Two neighboring valleys, two completely different flavor identities for nearly identical recipes. That kind of regional specificity does not emerge from invented tradition. It emerges from generations of real cooks making real decisions with what was available. The greatest public display of Amish food traditions happens not in a restaurant, but at a wedding. Amish weddings are traditionally held on Tuesdays or Thursdays in late fall, once the harvest is safely complete. Feeding 400 guests is considered ordinary. Some weddings seat closer to 1,000 people, and there is no caterer, no rented hall, and no professionally produced food of any kind. Every ingredient comes from the family's land and kitchen. The centerpiece of the wedding meal is a dish called rawasht, which is chicken or turkey layered with buttery bread stuffing and baked until the top turns golden and crisp. Around it come mashed potatoes with gravy, creamed celery, fresh buns, raised donuts, and a long row of homemade pies. Creamed celery became so closely associated with weddings that a large celery patch growing in an Amish garden was once read as a quiet signal that a daughter in the household was engaged. After the noon meal, guests return in the evening for a second, lighter spread of stewed chicken, macaroni and cheese, cold cuts, and more dessert. 2 full meals, hundreds of guests, 1 farmhouse kitchen, no outside help. And notice what is absent from that picture. No signature cocktails, no themed decor, no plated tasting courses designed to impress a photographer. Most Amish weddings serve the same dinner their parents and grandparents served at their own weddings. The food is the food, and that continuity is not a failure of creativity. It is the entire point. The same commitment to continuity shapes every holiday table. In the weeks before Christmas, Pennsylvania Dutch kitchens fill with the smell of anise cookies, sand tarts, walnut kisses, and pfeffernusse, the small spiced cookies dusted in powdered sugar that have appeared on Amish holiday plates for 200 years. And every year in the days before Lent, those same kitchens produce fasnachts, the traditional Pennsylvania Dutch donuts fried in lard and eaten on Shrove Tuesday, a calendar-driven food ritual tied directly to the religious year that has persisted in this community for generations. Pies hold a status in Amish households that is difficult to fully explain to an outsider. A skilled homemaker might bake 12 pies in a single afternoon and line them on a cellar shelf to last the week. Among them, Snitz pie, made from dried apple slices stewed with cinnamon and sugar, occupies a place of quiet importance. Served regularly at church meals and community gatherings throughout Lancaster County. In summer, no community gathering is complete without gallons of chicken corn soup, made with whole kernels of sweet corn cut fresh from the cob. A dish so central to Pennsylvania Dutch summer cooking that it appears at nearly every public gathering from June through September. Daughters learn to cook early, standing beside their mothers through every meal of the day, absorbing techniques that no recipe card fully captures. Writers like Lovina Eicher, known nationally as the Amish cook, have carried these methods to readers across the country, and her column ran in newspapers for decades. Modern Amish families do adapt, and weekday tables in many homes now include lasagna, taco salad, and other dishes the community's founders never encountered. But at weddings, funerals, church gatherings, and holidays, the old recipes return without fail. The numbers around this community are worth pausing on. According to the Young Center for Anabaptist and Pietist Studies at Elizabethtown College, in the year 2000, roughly 178,000 Amish people lived in North America. By 2025, that number had climbed past 410,000, an increase of more than 130% in a single generation. The population doubles approximately every 20 years, driven by families that average 6 to 7 children and a retention rate of around 80%. Today, Amish communities exist across 32 states and 3 Canadian provinces. Colorado's Amish population recently jumped nearly 57%. Montana's grew by more than 60%. Holmes County, Ohio alone is home to around 40,000 Amish, one of the largest single concentrations anywhere in the world. Every one of those households cooks 3 meals a day, from scratch, without a microwave, without a food processor, and without a delivery app. The Shady Maple Smorgasbord in Lancaster County, which serves traditional Pennsylvania Dutch cooking, has become the second most visited tourist attraction in the entire county. Restaurants like Yoder's in New Holland have served the same style of home cooking for more than 40 years to visitors who drive hours for a meal that tastes like someone's grandmother made it. Because, in a very real sense, she did. Now return to the strange fact that opened this video. There is technically no such thing as Amish food traditions as a formal, codified system. No law requires the Shoofly pie. No scripture describes the proper ratio of sweet to sour on a properly set table. What exists instead is something considerably rarer than a cuisine. It is a food system built from the soil up, sustained by a philosophy that treats cooking as an act of faith and care rather than a chore to be minimized. Grain from rotated fields, meat from animals raised with space and dignity, vegetables from kitchen gardens, all of it preserved by hand and cooked from scratch, 3 times a day for 3 centuries, by people who understood that feeding someone well is one of the most direct ways to show them they matter. The modern world spent the last 80 years building an industrial food system designed to remove time, skill, and effort from eating. The Amish spent those same 80 years doing exactly what they had always done, quietly and without commentary, and the world keeps showing up at their tables, looking for something it gave away without quite meaning to. Good food was never about equipment, trends, or speed. It was always about time, patience, and cooking as though the people sitting down to eat truly depend on you. Because in the Amish kitchen, they always have.